Welcome. Today I will talk about a game which I played in the quarantine Bundesliga against the Swedish Grandmaster Nils Grandelius. So Nils is one of the players who is regularly playing in the quarantine Bundesliga and who even regularly streams his games during the tournament. He also did so for this particular game, and I will put a link into the description below, such that you can see his side of the game. In general, I can highly recommend his channel, because he always has a good mood, no matter whether he wins or loses, and it's quite instructive to follow him. That being said, Nils, as I said, is a very strong Grandmaster with a rating above 2600, and I could have played against him actually on board one of the regular Bundesliga, but since we already played against Hamburg and he wasn't there for that match, this is not going to happen anymore. He started the game with a move d4, and after c4 I quickly thought about, do I want to go for Grinfeld? And then I thought, no, maybe I go for something more solid against such a strong player, and I went for the move c6. So the more regular move order is, of course, d4, d5, c4, c6, because this basically allows white to play the move bishop f4. So this is kind of an independent line, but I was completely happy with playing this line because it just goes away a little bit from the more trodden theory path, and I could perfectly live with that. So he played e3, e6, knight c3, and now in contrast to many normal Slav positions, he has his bishop on f4 rather than being on c1. So that's a slight advantage for white compared to the regular positions. But black also has a little trump, and this is that I can play the move bishop to d6, which now basically asks white, do you want to exchange bishops? And then we get a somewhat dull position, which is maybe a little bit better for white, but which is not that much of an issue. And yeah, he rejected that by going bishop g5, which is also perfectly playable. So I think in both cases, white is a little bit better, but it's not such a big advantage. And after a couple of normal developing moves, bishop b7, castles, we reach the first position which we might consider to be critical. And I think in this position he should probably have played c takes d5 to force me to declare my intentions here. So if I go c takes d5, then I have a slightly worse structure here, and this bishop on b7 is not particularly happy. And if I go e takes d5, then I will have to break up with c5 later on, and probably also this position is a little bit better for white. In any case, it's not really tragic for black, but I think he should have gone for c takes d5 to force me to take back either with the c pawn or with the e pawn in this position. Instead, he went with another logical move, the move e4. But I think after e4, it's pretty simple for me to equalize. I can just take on e4 and go bishop e7. Yeah, and now he faces a decision with respect to his knight. Should he exchange on f6? But yeah, this also does not really accomplish very much, and my idea is to just go c5 no matter what afterwards anyhow. So he now went for queen e2, played c5, and he went for rook fd1, developing another rook. It's quite interesting that he chose this f1 rook, and later on in the game we see why he did that. So I took on e4, wanted to exchange some pieces, because of course against such a strong player I would also be happy with a draw. And now went for knight f6, releasing the tension, and after queen e3 I just went for rook a8, and now it's clear that black has equalized. Yeah, now after some thought, he played the move h3, so he took more than 30 seconds to play this move, which in a blitz game is quite a lot, which shows also that white doesn't have any obvious plan here. So if he goes d takes c, I can take back either with the queen or with the pawn, and my position is completely fine. And then probably a lot of pieces will be exchanged on the d file, and the game will possibly peter out to a draw. Now I moved my queen to c7, which is a slightly better square. In particular, it avoids any d5 shenanigans from white, and yeah, prepares c takes d4. which I now played. And after knight takes d4, I was now faced with an interesting decision. So the question was, should I go a6 to avoid knight b5, or do I have something else? And it turns out that I have a pretty good move here. And yeah, the move is rook to d7. And the idea is just that after knight b5, I can go queen to c6. So I don't have to weaken my structure with the move a6, but I can just go queen c6 and now threaten rook fd8, taking control over the d file. And right now I get the d file in the game, which is at least worth something. So of course he could now go knight to d4, and it's not so clear if I have anything better than to go back queen c7 and to repeat moves. But he wanted to spice up things a little bit and went for rook d7 followed by a4. Interesting plan. So now he wants to go a5, and of course my pawns here on the queen side on b6 and a7, they are somewhat weak, but I have the d file. So it was not exactly clear to me how to evaluate the position. I think he still felt that he's a bit better here, but to be honest, I felt that the position is probably just very complicated. I went for rook d8, and yeah, now he played a5 with the intention that after b takes a5, maybe he can even go queen takes a7, and now the a5 pawn will probably also fall in a moment. So therefore, after a5, I used the opportunity to have this beautiful Zwischenzug with a6, because now after knight c3, b takes a7 is no longer hanging, and he's forced to take the a5 pawn instead. When now it is clear that on the queen side, he has the pawn majority and he has pressure against a6, but his king is, of course, a little bit more loose than my king, because his back rank is unprotected. Also, the pawn on b3 can become weak, and so I directly played against this target by going queen to b7. And yeah, now in this position, I think he lost track a little bit. It's probably still around equal, but now he really wanted to go for it and went for the move knight to a4, which is probably not very good. The idea of knight a4 was that after rook d1, king h2, queen c7 check, he has queen e5. And if I exchange queens, he gets an ending which is slightly better for white. So in this position, maybe I can also go queen d8 and then start a similar mating attack. But yeah, so this was his idea in any case. And after knight a4, I thought for a bit and then decided to go knight to e4. Because, I mean, right now the only piece that was not really playing was this knight on f6, and knight a4 now allowed this knight to go to a very, very nice square on e4. And yeah, now the position is probably already better for black, and he went really all in right now with the move queen to b6, which is again a mistake, I think, because it just weakens his king too much. So of course, if I now exchange, he has accomplished what he wants, but now instead I go for rook d1 check and queen d7, trying to start an attack against his king. So I'm potentially threatening things like queen d3, queen f1, queen h1 mate, and he is not in time to just snatch this pawn on a6 and then do something very slow. So instead he decided to go for rook to e5. But here you see the next problem of the king's position right now, which is knight d2. This very bad knight from f6 is now activated, so this is why the move knight a4 was pretty bad, and now threatens to go knight f1 check. The computer still gives some sort of defense with knight c3 and somehow trying to chase down my rook, but even in that line, black is just better. And instead of doing that, he now blundered because he was probably afraid of knight f1 and therefore went for g3, which allows me to get a nice fork on f3. After king g2 takes, He lost the rook, but at least he could win back the exchange. So in material terms, maybe it's not as bad at first glance, but after queen d3, it's pretty obvious that white gets mated here as well. So not much he can do. Knight c3 check, rook d3 check, and the king has to run to the 4th rank right now, and obviously now gets mated. So after king g4, f5, king h4, g5, king h5, queen h3, the game was over, and I managed to mate him. Yeah, so I think, to be fully honest, he was overambitious in this game and probably could have taken the game to a more drawish conclusion. But then we saw this very nice motive that once he allowed my knight to be activated to go to e4, I fully captured my possibilities and yeah, had this nice mating attack in the end. So I hope you enjoyed the game. I also hope that you follow Nils on his Twitch account, and I also wish him all the best. So that's it from my side. See you next time.
When you have stress, play chess. When you fall on your ass, play chess for a real deal, for Christian seal.